Elena Voss had learned, over 2 long years, how to survive in a world that was never built for someone like her. She was human-born, raised without claws or fangs, or the quiet hum of a wolf beneath her skin, and yet on the night of Damien Ashford's coronation, the mate bond had chosen her anyway. She still remembered the shock on every face in that grand hall when their new Alpha King turned from the crowd of pure-blooded wolves and looked only at her, a caterer's assistant standing near the back with a tray of untouched wine glasses. Nobody had planned for it. Least of all Damien. He was not a cruel man, not in the way the old stories described Alpha Kings, but he was distant, guarded, a king raised to believe that softness was a weakness the pack could not afford. He gave Elena a title, a home, protection, everything a mate was owed by law. What he did not give her, not for a long time, was himself. Still, she stayed. She learned the customs, the ceremonies, the strange rhythms of a world hidden just beneath the human one. She smiled through the whispers of nobles who called her an accident of fate. She waited through the long nights when Damien sat alone in his study instead of beside her, and she told herself that the bond between them was proof enough that somewhere inside him, he cared. She simply had to be patient. Patience, she would later think, was the costliest gift she ever gave anyone. The betrayal did not happen the way she used to imagine her worst fears might. There was no confession, no argument. It happened in silence, in a locked room she was never meant to open. It began with Lyra Vane, a councilwoman with sharp eyes and sharper ambition, who had wanted the throne beside Damien long before Elena ever arrived. Lyra was patient too, but her patience was a blade, not a virtue. She waited for her moment, and when it came, she used a rare and dangerous substance drawn from wolfsbane, one that could cloud even an alpha's mind, stripping away his memory and his judgment for a single night. Elena found out because a servant, afraid and ashamed, could not keep the secret any longer. She went looking for Damien that evening, to tell him something small and ordinary, a matter of the household, nothing that mattered in the end. She found his door unlocked. She found Lyra's laughter fading into silence as she stepped inside. She found the mark on Lyra's neck that could only have been left by an alpha's claim, still fresh, still warm. She did not scream. She did not demand answers. Something in her simply went still, like a candle pinched out between two fingers. Damien woke hours later with no memory of what had happened, his mind thick with fog, his body aching in a way he did not understand. When he finally pieced together what the wolfsbane had done, when he finally understood what Elena must have seen, he ran through the halls of his own castle calling her name. But her rooms were empty. Her scent, the one thing that should have led any wolf straight to her, had already begun to fade, masked by charms Elena had quietly gathered over many months, just in case she ever needed to disappear. She had never planned to use them. She had bought them, hidden them, out of a fear she never spoke aloud. That night, fear became certainty, and certainty became a decision. By morning, Elena Voss was gone. She did not take jewels or titles, or anything that marked her as a king's mate. She took a single bag, a little money she had saved on her own, and the fierce, quiet resolve of a woman who had given someone her whole heart and had nothing left to give, if it meant losing herself completely. She crossed into the human world where wolves rarely went looking, changed her name, and let the life of the Alpha King's mate dissolve behind her like mist in morning light. Damien searched. He searched the way a man searches when he has finally understood, too late, what he is losing. He questioned the guards, the servants, every soul who might have seen her leave. He found the truth about Lyra within days, confirmed by the pack healer, who identified the wolfsbane derivative still lingering faintly in his blood. Lyra denied nothing when confronted. She had gotten what she wanted, or so she believed, and she seemed almost proud of it, right up until the council stripped her of her seat and cast her from the territory for good. But justice against Lyra did nothing to bring Elena back. Damien hired human investigators, men and women who knew how to move through cities and records in ways his own trackers could not. He called on allied packs across the world, asking quietly, carefully, for any sign of a woman who matched her description. He followed rumors to Prague, to Lisbon, to a small fishing village in South America, where a stranger swore she had seen a woman with Elena's eyes. Each lead crumbled to nothing. Each disappointment carved something out of him that he was not sure would ever grow back. Months became a year became 3. The council murmured that their king had grown thin and quiet, that he sat too long in empty rooms, that a kingdom needed a ruler who was present, not one who spent his nights staring at maps covered in red pins marking every place Elena might have gone and had not. Damien heard the murmurs. He did not care. He had built an empire of duty his entire life, and none of it had ever felt as important as the woman he had let slip through his fingers. He did not know, could not have known, that somewhere far from Blackthorn Ridge, in a small town by the sea, Elena was raising a daughter who had his eyes. She had discovered the pregnancy only weeks after she left, in a rented room above a laundromat, staring at a plastic test with hands that would not stop shaking. She had cried, not from fear of the child, but from the aching unfairness of loving someone so completely, and having a piece of him she never wanted to be reminded of. And yet, when her daughter was born, when tiny fingers wrapped around her own for the first time, all that unfairness melted into something else entirely. She named her Mira, and she built a life around her, small and quiet, and entirely her own. Elena found work at a bookshop tucked between a bakery and a stone church, the kind of place where nobody asked questions about her past. She told the townspeople she was widowed. It was easier than the truth, and in some private corner of her heart, it did not feel like a lie at all. The king she had loved had, in some sense, died the night she saw that mark on Lyra's neck. The man who might come looking for her, if he ever did, was someone she was not sure still existed. She was wrong about that, though she would not know it for a while longer. It was a retired tracker, a friend of Damien's from his younger years, who finally found the thread that led somewhere real. A photograph, taken by a tourist and shared without thought on the internet, showed a small coastal town's spring festival. In the corner of the image, half turned away from the camera, stood a woman with Elena's exact posture, her exact way of tilting her head when she listened to someone speak. Damien stared at that photograph for 3 days before he trusted himself enough to book a flight. He did not arrive as a king. He left his title behind at the border, along with the guards who would have followed him anywhere. He arrived as a man in a plain coat, walking the unfamiliar streets of a town he had never seen, searching every face for the one he had spent 3 years chasing across 100 false leads. He found her outside the bookshop, arranging a small display of paperbacks in the window. For a long moment, he simply stood there, afraid that if he moved, if he breathed too loudly, the moment would shatter, and she would vanish again, the way she had every other time hope had led him somewhere real. Elena felt his presence before she saw him. Some old, quiet part of the bond she thought she had severed stirred awake, and she turned, and there he was. Neither of them spoke at first. 3 years of searching and 3 years of hiding had built a silence between them that words did not seem able to cross. It was Damien who broke it, and when he did, his voice was rougher than she remembered. Worn down by grief, he had never allowed himself to fully release. He told her everything. The wolfsbane, the healer's confirmation, Lyra's exile, the nights he had spent staring at maps, the version of himself he had lost somewhere between his own guilt and his desperate hope that she might still be somewhere in the world, waiting to be found. He did not ask her to forgive him. He said he had not come to be forgiven. He had come because staying away, even to spare her further pain, had become a cruelty he could no longer live with. Elena listened with her arms crossed, and her heart pounding in a way she had almost forgotten it could. 3 years had given her strength she had not known she possessed. She was no longer the quiet young woman who had waited patiently in a cold castle for scraps of affection. She had built something of her own, something real, and she would not let anyone, not even him, tear it down again. But she also could not deny what she saw standing in front of her. This was not the composed, unreachable king who had kept her at arm's length for 2 years. This was a man who had lost everything that once defined him, and had come anyway, with nothing to offer but the truth and himself. She did not invite him inside that day. She told him, plainly, that trust was not something 3 years of searching could simply repair. If he wanted to be part of her life, of Mira's life, It would take more than a confession on a sidewalk. It would take time, patience, and the kind of presence he had never given her before. Damien agreed without hesitation. He found a small room to rent above the very bakery beside her shop, and he stayed. He did not push his way into her days. He waited outside the bookshop some evenings, not to pressure her, but simply to be near, in case she ever decided she wanted him to be. It was Mira, in the end, who brought them fully together. She was too young to understand titles or kingdoms or wolfsbane, but she understood, in the simple way children do, that the quiet man who sometimes waited outside her mother's shop looked at her the way she imagined a father might. One evening, she walked straight up to him and asked if he wanted to see the drawing she had made. Damien knelt down without a moment's thought, and something in Elena's chest, something she had guarded fiercely for 3 years, finally allowed itself to soften. Weeks turned into months. Damien formally gave up his crown, choosing to remain in the small coastal town, rather than return to a kingdom that no longer felt like home, without Elena in it. The Council of Blackthorn Ridge was left to choose a new ruler from among its ranks, and though there was disbelief, and even outrage at first, none of it reached Damien. He had already decided that the life he wanted was not a crown, but a small house near the sea, a daughter who was learning to trust him, and a woman who was slowly, carefully, letting him back into her heart. The mate bond, which Elena had believed broken beyond repair, had never truly disappeared. It had only gone quiet, waiting, the way something precious sometimes waits for the right moment to be trusted again. She felt it stir fully awake the evening she watched Damien lift Mira onto his shoulders on the beach, both of them laughing at something only the two of them understood, the setting sun turning the water gold behind them. Elena did not run back into his arms that night, and she did not promise him forever, but she stood at the edge of the water, watching the man who had once broken her heart become, slowly and honestly, someone worth trusting again. And for the first time in 3 long years, she let herself believe that some things, even the most broken ones, could still be built back into something whole.